breathe. All right, and we are live now. Peace and love, everyone out there. Welcome back to the Healing Cypher. I'm your host, Queen Tamara, and tonight we have a very special guest. And before we get into that, we're going to talk about our topic tonight, which is Florida's healing history. It's a lot to learn about Florida in terms of its healing and its exciting history that many of us do not know. Is not something that's mainstream. And so when most of us think of Florida, we think about the pristine beaches, Disney World, um, just some of the other natural wonders and natural beauty. And so few people know that Florida has long been a destination for people seeking healing. Florida has a reputation of being a place where people go to swim in its curative waters, and it's so much more hidden history. Florida has over 1,000 place unlike anywhere else in the entire world. And tonight we're going to dive deeper into this subject with our beloved guest, Dr. Narco Longo. So join me in welcoming him. And for those who don't know, he is the host of and the mind behind the channel Old World Florida. So yay, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate the warm welcome.
Thank you. Oh, my pleasure. So share with us a little bit about yourself.
Um, I get asked like about myself, and I always don't have that much to say. I was born in Florida. I grew up with a
Mhm.
kind of outdoorsy background, so I had that as an advantage, as a privilege, being outdoorsy and going to summer camp, things like that. And my father was very into history, so I had that to my advantage. And
That's
I'm a
good.
musician, so I play guitar, and I think that brings a unique perspective to
Oh,
a lot of
great.
things. Plato said, the philosopher Plato said, all humans should deserve an education in music and gymnastic.
Mm-hmm.
So music
Mm.
could be generalized as artistic expression, and then
Mm-hmm.
gymnastic could be generalized as athletic expression or exercise. So
Yeah.
with those two, Plato said that you are best equipped for life with an upbringing in music and athletics or gymnastics.
Oh, wow.
And I was lucky to have both of those growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very privileged in that sense. But then I grew up in Florida. I love Florida. I grew up around high school. Everyone starts talking about moving to other places, and everyone was saying, "Oh, I hate Florida. I hate Florida. I hate this." And people are just complaining, and it was always in my heart that Florida is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. Why would anyone want
Mm-hmm.
to leave? If you have the blessing of being born
Right.
here and calling it your home, why would you ever want to go anywhere else?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not even talking about health. That's just comfort. That's just living
Mm.
comfortably throughout the year. In terms of health, I got into holistic health when I was about 18 or 19. I was
Mm-hmm.
taking, it sounds a little cliche, but I was taking a lot of psychedelic drugs and, whatever you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
psychotropic plant medicine, whatever. And I kind of started, I
Plant
could no
medicines. Yeah,
longer,
definitely.
I could no longer consume certain foods after taking this and kind of committing to a certain lifestyle.
Mm.
I noticed I couldn't eat the same foods.
Oh, wow.
So I was compelled from
Mm-hmm.
inside to a holistic diet. And I started out just removing certain things from my diet and not knowing where to go. And luckily, over the years, I found met along a lot of good people.
Mm-hmm.
I had the privilege of working for a vegan food company, raw vegan food company
That's great.
eh, with the emphasis on
Mm-hmm.
healing. It wasn't just like consumption food; it was healing foods. And I had almost a year in a kitchen working like that with a very very smart chef. So I don't think I've shared that much in other shows. That's more kind of my
Mm-hmm.
healing or health, holistic health background is a
Your
little bit of.
that's your healing journey. That's your heal. I call it the healing journey. Yeah.
I can also say I've been, you know, um, I had decent health up until I was 18, 19, but after I made some
Mm-hmm.
changes very early on, I'm, I have not been sick since I was 18 or 19. Since I moved out of my parents' house, I have not gotten sick. I got
That's
sick.
awesome.
I got sick one time in Tallahassee. I
Mm-hmm.
was, I don't know, smoking pot with a group of people, and that whole group
Mm-hmm.
of people had mono. I was sick for one day. Everyone else was sick for a
Oh.
month. But that's the only time I've been sick in the last eight
Mm-hmm.
years or 8 years is. So I don't know if that's a Florida thing or if that's a diet thing, combination of the two. But I think I'm
Yeah.
a little bit qualified to speak on health because I think if you are,
Yeah.
I don't want to listen to an old doctor. I don't want to listen to a fat doctor. I don't want to listen to someone who spent more time indoors learning about health than people who learn outdoors about health. So
Exactly.
that's why I call myself a doctor too. I think it's funny. I'm ridiculing the mainstream doctors who think that this title is some, badge of honor or that it makes them more
Yeah.
important than anyone else. I think if you have good intention and
Mm-hmm.
have if you have a inclination to heal and fix people, I think you've earned the right of doctor. I don't think I've earned the right of doctor,
Mm-hmm.
but to me, I don't think you pay for the right of for the title of doctor. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think you sit in school for a certain amount of time and earn the title of doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Very good. Yeah. And then it's to me it's a difference between being a doctor and then like you said, a genuine healer who has a desire to help people heal.
Hmm. And if you say
Yeah.
docked, if we're doctoring the truth, what does that mean?
Hmm.
Does that mean that we're
Mm,
holding true? Does that mean that we're holding true to the truth? No, doctoring the
yes.
truth means picking out the pieces that suit us and
Hmm.
hiding the rest, hiding the good, hiding the what
Hmm.
people what you don't want people to see. So doctor is not proud title that I think most people think it is. I think it's whatever.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And then, how did you get involved in history? Because I've watched your channel. I think I discovered it maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, and been trying to catch up with the videos. There's a lot of great content, and I know a lot of it surrounds around the history of Florida or just the history in general. A lot of the history that is, um, I don't know, not the mainstream history because or the
Hmm.
history that most of
Yeah.
us are so saturated with, and many people are it's like a great awakening going on right now, so a lot of people are
Hmm.
exploring and searching and looking, and they're coming across this knowledge. A lot of it has been hidden in plain sight.
Hmm.
In particular, one of your videos where you explored the old world buildings in Florida. And I've been to Florida many times. It's one of my favorite places to visit. And what I like most about Florida's energy is different. You know, it has a different kind of energy than any other state or country I've been to, which I really enjoy. I feel so much better and lighter. But what I have noticed, not just in Florida, but in a lot of other states in the United States, you see a lot of buildings that just seem out of place with the other architecture. And I noticed that you explore a lot of that. And so, how did you get involved in history?
Sure. So my, like I touched on, my father was into world history, especially like
Mm,
military history and this war, and
mhm,
these people fought these people, and that was kind of his soft spot for
mhm,
history. But another thing, he went to Florida State University, so he was
mhm,
a Seminole, and I grew up hearing stories about the Seminoles, and my father was very proud to be
mhm,
a Florida State Seminole, as their mascot, and he would tell us stories, and I'd grow up with all these, um, you know, Seminole like figurines around the house and stuff,
mhm,
and that left a large impact. And I didn't think about it for like 10 years until I got out of high
mhm,
school, started doing this stuff. And then it dawned on me how unique of a people and a history they have, and so much more. That was one of the starting points for the journey. Another part of it
mhm,
was, I'll be the first to admit that I'm more of an astrologer, more of a, I don't know, mythologist.
mhm.
And I
Mythology.
early, was not early in on this, old world movement. I kind of got in late to the Tartaria discussion and stuff like that. And that's why
Okay.
my focus has always been Florida. Um,
Mhm,
I think a lot of people have done really good work showing ancient structures all across the world. I didn't want to step on anyone else's toes and
mhm,
steal anyone or go to anyone else's backyard. I thought I would just stay in my own backyard, and it's worked
mhm,
out well for me. I think you can really focus and dig in deep to one area if you
mhm,
make it your
mhm,
if you center around it for a large amount of time. But I would also say that I was watching. I'll shout out some good channels here. New Earth, the New Earth channel, like 10 years ago, 7 years ago, was
yeah.
putting out such good content. New Earth,
Mhm,
and she was showing a lot of satellite imagery of Florida, and she lives in like
mhm,
Bulgaria or something.
mhm.
So she'd never been to Florida. I
Oh
was
wow.
watching from Florida, and she was showing all these, ancient mounds, ancient canals,
Mhm,
earthworks,
mhm,
all these things from
mhm,
satellite imagery. That was one of the first things I ever saw about Florida history and the hidden history of, wow, these people were doing a lot of, um, terraforming. They were
mm,
terraforming this land way before the Spanish got here, and
mhm,
so that's one of my entry points into the Florida history. Is I always liked
mhm,
history too, in history class I was good at it, but yeah.
mhm. That's great. Yeah. Um. Now the end. What's so the video where the woman was showing the video, the satellite image. Is that what sparked your interest in Florida's history?
She was the one who opened my eyes to the fact that somebody lived in Florida a long time ago, and they were as advanced
Mhm.
as the Inca or the ancient Egyptians, or they were as advanced, if not more
Mhm.
advanced, and their
Mhm.
fingerprints are all across the landscape in Florida. So she was the
Wow.
first one where I really started looking at Florida with a different perspective.
Mhm.
That was
Mhm.
that was New Earth channel. I think her name's Sylvie or Sylvia or something. And then also Robert Sepper. I don't agree
I'll look
with
that up.
with a lot of what Robert Sepper says,
Yes, I heard.
but Robert Sepper posted videos about giants in America, and he posted videos. One
Mhm.
video, it was actually someone else's interview, but he posted it. It was Rob Skiba interviewing Tim Bentz talking about the Temecula tribe of Florida. So I talk about the Temecula all the time. But 10 years ago or
Yes.
5 years ago, to hear that the Temecula were giants, no one had heard that. I'd never heard that. I'd never seen that on the internet before. So Robert
Mhm.
Sepper kind of reposted this really good interview, and that was discussing the Jekyll Island giants. So Jekyll
Mhm.
Island is where Rockefeller and his friends drafted the Federal Reserve, which is like the banking system that we all live
Mhm.
under today. They drafted that in
Yes.
Jekyll Island, and Jekyll Island was home of giants. There was a blood sacrifice altar, and
Mm.
they signed the Federal Reserve into action, or drafted it. It was later signed into action. They drafted it on top of a
Okay.
blood sacrifice altar at Jekyll Island. So I
Altar.
saw that video, and my eyes were like, whoa, you know?
Oh. And so Jekyll Island is a part of. I thought that was a part of Georgia. That's a part of
It
Florida.
is. You're right.
Okay,
It's Georgia, but it's like right on the border. It's like,
on the
uh,
border.
and before it used to be part of La Florida, but today it's
Mhm.
Georgia. So you're right. It is Georgia.
Interesting. The name Jekyll. Wonder
Hmm.
the connection.
Also, George,
Yeah.
whenever you see Saint George is the one on top of the dragon who's stabbing the dragon, slaying the dragon, kind
Mhm.
of like Saint Patrick slaying the snakes.
Yes, I've seen that. Mhm.
It's the same archetype, and
Yes.
you have oh, I forgot what I was gonna say, but whatever.
That's okay. We were
Jekyll
talking about St.
Island.
George. We were talking about Jekyll. I think that's what sparked the interest. I said the meaning of the significance of the name Jekyll Island. Like,
Hmm.
you hear Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Is there a connection to the names
Hmm.
that they give these places?
Yes, it's a biblical name. And then also the Tim
Hmm.
Bentz, the guy who was discussing the giant skeletons, the strange
Yes.
religious practices of the Temecula, he
Hmm.
he labeled them as Canaanite. He said that he had studied Canaanite altars, Canaanite artifacts,
Canaanites. Okay.
and he said that they were Canaanite.
Hmm.
Culturally, they were Canaanites from the Bible. That's what his opinion, the guy who made this interview. But
Okay.
it's whatever.
Interesting. Yeah. Can you share with the listening audience the history of Florida's natural springs?
Sure. So right from the beginning of recorded mainstream history, Florida was a land of intrigue. It was a land of
Mm.
unique, special qualities. And
Yes.
to some people would go there and say, "Oh, this is terrible. Nothing, it's nothing grows here. Man can't live here." Other people would go there and say, "Everything grows here. This is
Yeah.
where man was meant to live, because if you know how to live here, it's the most advantageous place to live in the world."
Hmm.
Um, but the history of the Florida Springs starts with Florida itself. I mean, Florida has the highest concentration of freshwater springs in the world by far. So there's about 1,000 notable spring heads in Florida. Notable meaning they're big enough to go swim at and take your family to. There's about 1,000
Right.
of those in Florida,
Oh
and
goodness. Right.
those
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, separate spring heads in Florida. And the springs, not only are they numerous and plentiful, they are almost all freshwater and drinkable, perfectly drinkable. So you know,
Mm-hmm.
in places like Mexico, in places
Mm-hmm.
like Idaho, you have hundreds of springs, but there are many of them are hot or
Yes.
too sulfury to drink. Florida's springs are all, for the most part,
Yes.
95% of them are drinkable and pure, clean, healing drinking water.
Okay.
So, talking about the history of Florida through the European lens of our mainstream
Mm-hmm.
timeline picks up with them thinking Florida was the Garden of Eden, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely they thought that the water here was the fountain of youth. The fountain
Mm-hmm.
of youth, the river of life, um, life, eternal waters, whatever term you use, they believed it to be in Florida. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. So that's
Um.
the healing spring water. And, you know, just tracing that back up to today, they were going 500 years ago
Mm-hmm.
for the spring water. Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my cat's making noise. Um, right up until the
That's okay.
right up until the stock market collapse of 1929, spring water tourism
Mm-hmm.
was Florida's number one industry, and the richest people in the world, the wealthiest, the most popular,
Yes.
the celebrities, would all travel to Florida to heal, to bathe in the springs. You had many presidents doing this. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of springs, even some of the hot springs in other states were visited, by
Hmm.
presidents because they'll have signs up to announce that President so and so
Hmm.
used to come here to bathe. So it was kind of like almost like
Hmm.
um, a privileged pastime for
Hmm.
some people. And why is it that now I know many people, not just people of religious backgrounds, but others as well. I guess based on the history that they know of Florida, they call Florida the Garden of Eden. Why is Florida called the
Right.
Garden of Eden as opposed to other place in the Far East or wherever?
Right. So if we're just talking about culturally, people come to
Mm-hmm.
America and they're just astounded by the fertility, especially of the
Mm-hmm.
Southeast United States. The Southeast United States, and you could bring this down into the Yucatan Peninsula and the Caribbean as well, is
Mm-hmm.
perhaps the most fertile place in the world. So Florida,
Mm-hmm.
almost anything grows here. Things that need mountains, things that need altitude, like grapes, things that need dryness, tend to forego their needs and just thrive in Florida for some reason. But shit, I forgot your question. Could you could you remind me?
I,
I'm sorry.
why do people many people it's okay, why do many
Okay,
people
Garden of
believe
Eden.
Florida is,
Right.
yeah.
Yes. So just off their experience alone, people would show up to Florida
Mm-hmm.
and they'd say, "Oh my God, it, everything grows here. The weather
Yes.
is so agreeable. It's so comfortable
Mm-hmm.
for the human being." A lot of people say, "Oh, Florida's so humid." Well,
Mm-hmm.
not to be lewd, but we forget that in the book of Genesis, we did not wear
Mm-hmm.
clothes or make fire until we left the Garden of Eden. So we
Mm-hmm.
did not need those things in the Garden of Eden. Florida is one of the only places in the world where you could potentially
Mm-hmm.
comfortably live outside with no clothes and no fire. So you don't need to know what fire is in Florida. And if you live in the mountains, you need fire on your side. You need clothes on your side.
Yeah.
Now, Mosquitoes
Oh yes.
have become worse in the last decades because of how stagnant the water is in Florida.
Mhm.
If you look at a map of
Okay.
Florida or a satellite, you'll see all these golf courses and neighborhoods with all these lakes behind them. And a lot of these
Yeah.
terraced neighborhoods have lakes behind every street.
Mhm.
All that water is sitting still. All of that still water produces mosquitoes. In the
Yes.
original Everglades, back in the 1830s,
Mhm.
1850s, men were going into the Everglades and said that they did not even need a mosquito net, that they could sleep outside at night with
Mm.
no mosquito net. So when Florida was flowing, Florida,
And not get by mosquitoes. Okay.
when it was flowing, Florida,
Mhm.
flowing like the Everglades, the mosquitoes were not that bad. So it was much more hospitable. You have the fruit, you
Mm.
have the water, an abundance of fruit, an abundance of water, um, a so people came here and just culturally what they had heard of as the Garden of Eden, they would apply that term to Florida. Now, ironically,
Mhm.
when we start getting to the brass tacks of a historical Garden of Eden, it actually starts to appear that Florida is potentially the only true candidate.
Mhm.
If Eden was a true place, if it wasn't just transcendental or metaphorical or allegorical, if it was real, you know, Florida is the only place in the world that has a river of four heads. It has the gopher wood from which the ark was
Mhm.
constructed in Genesis. We have
Yes.
in Georgia, on the Florida-Georgia border, you have bdellium, meaning pine tar, pine rosin, which is very important in the Old Testament. It's what they pitched Noah's Ark
Okay.
out of. That grows in Florida and
Oh.
Georgia, perhaps more than anywhere else in the world. That's pine rosin,
Mhm.
pine sap. Well, what else? You have
Pine sap.
the good gold of Havilah from Genesis. The good gold of Havilah is said to be the purest gold in the world. Well, Georgia produces the purest gold in the world. The
Interesting.
Dahlonega,
Okay.
the Dahlonega, Georgia, U.S. gold mint, where they were minting gold coins, was the purest gold in the world. It was 24 karat
Mhm.
naturally coming out of the ground, over 99% purity. The closest that they find in the wild
Mhm.
today is 22 karat. So that's the purest gold today that they find is 22 karat. In Georgia, you had originally 24 karat gold. So that's the good gold of Havilah, the bdellium, the gopher wood, the
Mhm.
river of four heads.
Go for it.
That's the that's the
Mhm.
Apalachicola River. So early on, you had people coming here and experiencing the the environment and the climate themselves, and then labeling it the Garden of Eden. But it wasn't until 1936, or sorry, it wasn't until 1966 when Florida's 1936 Republican candidate for governor, E. E. Calloway,
Mhm.
wrote a wrote a book called In the Beginning, where he proves, or he attempts to prove, that Florida was the Garden of Eden. And he lays out many of the facts I just described: the garden, the river of four heads, and yeah.
Okay.
So,
Pretty compelling, right? And also, traveling throughout the U.S. on road trips. What I have noticed, and I always wondered why. I said at some point in history, this is before I knew all of this. At some point in history, was Florida part of the Caribbean because you can travel all over the U.S., all over the Southeast, as far as like the Gulf Coast and Texas and Louisiana, some in places. But Florida has just a totally different, unique plant biodiversity. Things just look so different
Hmm.
there. And like you said, the springs. I've been to a few of the springs, like Guinea Springs, Blue Springs. Just the clearness and of the water. It just looks so different than any other state. It's like almost,
Hmm.
I want to say, an anomaly. Like it's an extension of the Caribbean that just happened to be attached to the U.S. That's what it looks and feels like.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the best of it's the best of both worlds. I think
And
you
we're
cut
having a
out for a
little
little.
delay in the streaming is acting up a little bit. Yeah, it keeps
Yeah,
doing it back and forth. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you perfectly right now.
Okay. Florida also sits Okay, great. Florida also sits on top of limestone in a cave system. I remember I think you did a video on that too. Does that have anything to do with the curative properties of natural springs?
Um, you've got this is kind of what purifies the water. So,
Mm,
in many other places in the world, you find springs at the top of mountains, and the water gets
mm,
pushed up through the
mm,
mountain almost like a breast, almost like the breast of the earth. You have
mm,
these waterways going up very often to the top of the mountain, to the
mm,
tip. And that's typically where you find your free flowing springs, is that there's
yeah.
pressure generated within the mountain that pushes the water up to the top, and that's where the water pushes out to the surface. In Florida, it's unique because most of our springs are down at sea level, so they're coming right out of the limestone. And when they come right out of the limestone, there's a couple
Mm-hmm.
things that makes Florida spring water unique. It's so minerally that many saltwater animals can live in Florida spring water. You have
Mm,
types of shrimp, eel, fish, many different types of fish that come into Florida springs that are elsewise saltwater animals, saltwater fish, but they can breathe Florida spring water. So it's
mm-hmm.
so minerally that saltwater animals can ingest it, breathe it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so fresh that humans can drink it. So there's something very unique about Florida spring water. But
Yeah.
then coming out of the limestone is a big purification system. It's a big
Okay.
filter. It's a big, strong sponge. And that sponge filters everything and it keeps that water so pure. But then there's another thing. Florida spring water is measurably radioactive.
Mm-hmm.
And lime, lime means like broken down um, fossils and fossilized shell
Mm-hmm.
for the most part.
Awesome.
Now, from lime, you get phosphate. So Florida is famous for its phosphate deposits. It's lime deposits. Lime is phosphate, and from lime you get
Okay.
limestone. So there's a preservative quality about lime. Lime is what they preserve, um, can preserve, not preserve like a living preservative, but can fossilize things and preserve it archaeologically. So you have, I don't know, how would we say? I try and make this connection, but I don't always know the best way to word it. When you look at the Florida spring water, when bones and flesh and dead animals
Mm-hmm.
fall into Florida spring water, they almost perfectly get preserved, like flash preserved, almost like
Preserved,
ice.
right.
So I think, and
Mm.
I don't know how to articulate it perfectly, but I think that preservative
Mm-hmm.
quality of preserving things after they're dead, there's a similar effect to things when you're alive. If you ingest this water, it has a infinity quality to it, meaning what's soaked in that water can potentially last much longer. So we see that in the fossils. We see that in living creatures too. I saw one of the questions you had down. I don't want to ruin that. We'll get to it, but about age length,
Yeah, sure.
human lifespan. But
Yes.
in Florida, there's a type of crawfish, crayfish, that lives underneath the surface in the limestone caves. That 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 crawfish, that type of crawfish, lives 10 times longer than its surface relative that lives elsewhere in America.
Mm,
So the type of
right.
Florida crawfish that lives in the Florida aquifer underneath the surface lives 10 times longer
Hmm.
than the one who lives above the surface. So I think that speaks volumes.
Yes. Hmm. That's interesting. Okay. So the water does have like a preservation, um,
Hmm.
what's the word for prolonging life or rejuvenative qualities. It has a lot of that.
Yes.
That is one of the questions. So it's been home to a lot of ancient civilizations and the historical accounts of people living to be over 100 years old and growing very tall. Can you share with some details you have about that? I know you briefly spoke on the giants, but
Sure.
the people who
Um,
have on record have shown to live, long periods of time healthily.
can I share my screen? Can I do that?
Um,
Do you know how to do that?
yes. Are you able to from your end?
Yes, I'm gonna present right
Well, I can do it from my side, present, but I don't know if that allows
here.
you to present.
Can you see it down there? You have to allow me to share. Once you click it, I can
Let's see.
down
This
there
is
at the bottom. It should say
huh.
present. If you see where I am down here,
All right, I
Dr.
click share
Longo.
screen.
Yeah.
Are you?
If you click on that box next to my name.
It's all right. Click on
Perfect.
this.
Thank you.
Add to stream.
Wonderful. We're here. We got it. So
And you
here
are
we
welcome.
have Florida Giants. These Florida Giants, Tuscaloosa is Alabama, or
Okay.
yeah, I think Alabama. But let's just look at some.
Yeah, I've heard
This
of him. Hmm.
let's look at the Temecula.
Hmm.
Boom. Okay, so the Temecula, when the Spanish first arrived in Florida, the Temecula were one of the first tribes they encountered. These people,
Hmm.
on average, were a full foot or a
Okay.
full head taller than the Europeans when they arrived, on average. So when we
Okay.
zoom in on them, you
So
have
we're talking at least what 6.5, 7 feet.
at least at least 6.5 would have been the short end for the
Hmm.
Temecula. But here we have them being depicted alongside the
For the
French.
Temecula.
Sorry?
Well,
Yes,
okay.
Temecula. Right here is a French guy, the French commander.
Hmm.
They're being very generous to him with height.
Hmm.
And the chief, they're not showing that much larger. They're showing him about a head taller. But in actuality, the chief was a full
Yes.
foot and a half taller than their tallest man. Their tallest man was 6'3", roughly. If you're a foot and a half taller than six
Okay.
foot three, that makes you almost 8 feet tall, right? So he's about
Almost
eight
eight
feet
feet.
tall.
Right.
And this
Hmm.
Temecula we're not only told that they were tall, we're told that they lived very, very long. So the same people who
Mm-hmm.
told us how tall they were, what's up, Dave, told us how old they were. They lived for 300 years, and their oldest was 350. So they're living in
Mm.
Florida. They're out in the sunlight all day. They're barefoot
Yes.
all day. If
Yeah.
they are, if they don't die by combat from fighting, they live to 300 years.
Years.
300 years.
Okay.
All right,
And the
this is the
Timucua
account.
were they were indigenous to what part of Florida? Was it central? Southern?
Central Florida up
I didn't
to
hear what you said.
Georgia. That's okay. Central Florida up to Georgia.
Central up. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Tampa Bay to Jekyll Island.
Okay.
And we're told that their bows were as thick as the arm. So the bows that they were using against the
Mm.
Spanish were thicker than the Spanish, their arms, thicker the wood was.
Okay.
And they were so, in another book, in La Florida de la Inca, the Spanish tried to pick up
Mm-hmm.
one of the native bows and use it, and they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't.
Okay.
The, the strongest Spaniard couldn't pull the bow back that the average Floridian was using. And we'd see this. This is an
Mm.
account of the Narvaez expedition, Panfilo de Narvaez. 300 men went into Florida,
Okay.
and they
Mm-hmm.
said that they, from 200 yards or 200 paces, they could shoot their arrows. Like, you know,
Mm.
very, very tall, very
Right.
strong. Their arrows, tipped with snake teeth, bone, or flint, penetrated 6 inches of wood or skewered from side to side soldiers in chainmail. So pretty
Oh, that's
grim
some
there, but it
courage. Yeah.
demonstrates the you know, power of these Temukua.
Mm-hmm.
And if we also look,
Yes, and it demonstrates their size because it was talking about how
mhm,
wide and heavy the bow and arrows were. Okay.
yes, now that's the Temukua.
I know I
Then we
have
have,
read in a lot of text they talk about how robust the people of Florida were when they met them.
mhm. Now we have the Seminole. The
Hmm.
Temukua, some people might hear that and they'll say, "Oh, that's myth. That's folklore. That's too old to verify. We don't know that." Well, the Seminoles, who are not directly to the Temukua, but are probably
Okay.
culturally related. They're both Creek descended peoples. They're both largely related to the Creek peoples, but or Muskogee, however you want to say it.
Okay.
The Indians who were being called Seminoles in Florida. Seminole, the name
Hmm.
Seminole applies to a lot of different people. But when they were talking about Florida natives in the 1900s up until the 1960s, now the headline here says Indians were 6 feet tall. But what that actually means is they were all over
Hmm.
6 feet tall. And if you actually do the math on all of
Yeah.
these, the average height is closer to 6'4", 6'3", the average height. So
Okay.
even today, the average height of Seminoles is very tall. But the farther back you go, the taller they were. The taller,
The taller they were. Okay.
the purer their blood, the taller they were. So when you go through this, these are all living Seminoles, and 6'2" back then was very tall, especially compared to the other Native Americans around them, who were 5.5 feet tall on average. Some of the other tribes in Florida were not that tall at all. But this is the Seminole. It goes through all the heights. Here's another piece of writing about the Seminole. Physically, both, quote, Physically, both men and women are remarkable. The men, as a rule, attract
Mm,
attention by their height, fullness, and symmetry of development. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Copper colored fellows over 6 feet in height and great
mm.
proportions. Extraordinary ability to endure and achieve. Here's one. Their flesh, this is something that makes me think of about health. Their flesh.
Okay.
So here, 2 of the warriors permitted me to manipulate the muscles of their bodies. Under my touch, these were more like rubber than flesh. More like rubber than flesh. What does that mean?
Mm,
That's coming from a doctor.
mm-hmm.
Uh, Even among the children, this physical superiority is seen. Unusual physical size and strength, Seminole men, handsome
Mm,
and exceptionally powerful. So they were huge. They were tall, and the
okay.
Seminoles were also
Right.
what the white man was calling at the time one of the civilized tribes, meaning they had etiquette, they
Okay.
had sophistication,
Mhm.
they weren't hunter gatherers. They were had a refined
Right.
society. And
Hmm.
this is Alabama. This is Tuscaloosa, Chief Tuscaloosa. He's
Okay.
depicted much taller, but he was said to be 10 feet tall. This guy,
Mm,
feet tall. Now, John D. Rockefeller, who um, who we were talking about with Jekyll Island, signed the Federal
yeah.
Reserve or drafted the Federal Reserve into existence at Jekyll Island. John D. Rockefeller was into some interesting stuff. Not only was he obsessed with Native American religious practices, he also only got his
Hmm.
drinking water from one place in the world. And if he was traveling, he demanded that this water be shipped to him wherever he was, and he would bathe in it, drink in it. It was the only water he'd use. That water was Orange Springs. Let me see if I can find this.
Sure.
No, I don't. Can't find it. But
Orange Springs from Florida. Okay.
John D. Rockefeller would only drink water from Orange Springs, Florida. And if he was traveling, he would demand that, and he would pay large sums of money to have Orange
Mm.
Springs water shipped to him wherever he was. So he lived pretty old too.
And he did. Okay. Hmm. Did he ever give any reasoning why or
No,
why that was his?
he was a very private, cryptic guy. He didn't share many secrets with the public like that. But
Okay.
people noticed because he couldn't hide the lengths to which he would go to get it shipped to him and brought to him so that he could drink it. So people around him noticed, wow, this is all he drinks. And it started getting out in
Mm.
the newspaper. That's how I found out about it. Was in a newspaper. It
Okay.
said John D. Rockefeller only drank from one spring. And Rick Kilby on YouTube, Rick Kirby or Rick Kilby,
Mm.
Florida spring expert. He talks about this too. John D. Rockefeller drinking a certain type of water from Florida.
All right.
But yeah.
Would that have anything to do with the origin of the term Florida water?
Yes. Now Florida water, the term originally comes from back in the 1500s. The Spanish were
Hmm.
hearing these stories of the Fountain of Youth from the natives. The
Okay.
natives who were living very long themselves, as we've seen, potentially,
Hmm.
also had stories and pointed to the water and said, well, the water is what makes you young, and there's certain fountains that were more life-giving than other ones. And the Spanish heard stories about this. They started drinking. They would feel
Yes.
better themselves, but they took it a step further. Okay, just like you'd expect. The Spanish started bottling
Hmm.
the water from Florida and bringing it back with them to Spain, and they would sell it for
Okay.
very, very large amounts of money. So Florida water started getting this reputation around the world as healing. People in Europe would
Mhm.
pay hundreds, thousands, whatever the equivalent of their money would be today, to get water from Florida when they were diseased. So if
Hmm.
they had an illness, you would order Florida water from the pharmacist.
Hmm.
So even in France and Italy and Spain and all these places, they have springs, they have sacred springs, they have
Sure.
holy ancient springs,
Yes.
but they were still paying to have Florida water shipped in for its healing qualities. Originally, it was just healing, and it was
Absolutely.
beneficial, and it was just the Florida water. Over time, it became more of a fragrance thing and more of a metaphysical thing, meaning, oh, the spirits like the
Yes.
Florida water, and there's truth to that.
Hmm.
But then you start
Sure.
getting a product known as Florida water. Now, Florida
Hmm.
water ended up being a combination of ingredients, not water from Florida. So the Florida water today that you buy in the bottle, and we sell it. We sell it at
Yeah.
our bookstore. I like it. I love the smell, but it's not
Yeah.
actually water from Florida anymore.
Hmm.
It's a fragrance, and I also wouldn't use
Hmm.
that on your skin. I love Florida water, the product, but don't use it on your skin because it's not natural. It's not holistic. But originally, Florida water
Okay.
is is pure Florida water shipped across the world for ingestion. Today, Florida water is a product that is more of a fragrance. It's not doesn't have those healing
Hmm.
qualities, but that's where the history comes from.
That's where the history, the origin of the name comes from. Okay. Are you had another newspaper clipping you wanted to share?
Yeah, this we don't have to read them all, but this one shows the extreme size that they were pulling out in the mounds of
Hmm.
Florida. The skeleton measured over
Hmm.
9 feet in length, and the jaws were large enough to
Mm.
take in those of an ordinary person, meaning it could fit in its mouth the jaws of a normal sized person. Also, some other evidence that we
A normal
have.
sized person. And if the skeleton remains, huh?
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I had a quick question, please. If the skeleton remains measured over 9 feet in length, and so, and I'm thinking after the person's demise, they would maybe, be smaller than they would be in when they're alive. So that person may have been well over 9 feet, maybe 10 feet tall, in when they were alive,
Hmm.
perhaps.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. This is Cedar Keys, Florida. We also have
Hmm.
Boca Grande. These are the articles. Anyone can go see these for
Right.
themselves. February 14th, 1925. These are the same articles that people today get their news, their finance information, their sports
Yes.
information. These are the same publications. Just 100 years ago, they weren't afraid to print
Sure.
things like this. Today, they're afraid to print things like this. So this is Boca Grande, Cedar Keys,
Hmm.
Fort Myers. Who's been to Fort Myers, Florida? Here's a picture of the skeleton. Pictures. People say, oh, that's just an article. Well, here's a picture. Evidence of tribal fights. Part of the trace of tribal fights among a race of giant Indians unearthed near Florida
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, near Fort Myers.
Different wires.
Amateur archaeologists find remains of Florida giants near Fort Myers. 250 bodies buried in each hill. 250 bodies in each hill. That's extraordinary. But yeah, very large race of giants in
Mm,
size and
it is.
strength. Here's another one, same story. But let's keep going. Homestead, that's down by the Keys. Here's the article. Miami Daily News. You know,
Okay.
this isn't some fringe conspiracy theorist publication. This is the Miami Daily News. Giant skeleton
Right.
found on key.
Near Cape Sable. Okay.
The eye sockets, it was said, were unusually high in the forehead. The skull, report
Mm.
said, has a protruding chin, the forehead is low and receding, and 10 teeth in the lower jaw took up all space available. The, um, a skull 3/4 of an inch thick. So the thickness of the bone is drastically thicker than modern humans.
Wow.
Um, some people say like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, were these just
And
dinosaur
have they
bones?
dated any of these?
Well, the giant bones,
Okay.
we don't get a clear dating on because most of these were sent to the
I see.
Smithsonian. Most of these were sent to the Smithsonian for dating. Let me see if I can find you
Okay.
one like that.
Okay. Yeah, because I noticed in each of the article they are just detailing the size and the magnitude of the bones they're finding, but they're not saying anything like an estimated date or time period.
Hmm. I want to
Once
find
living in
one of,
Miami,
yeah, Miami. This
lost
one's pretty crazy. Um,
on Earth here in Spanish War. Okay.
I want to find one that talks about how they sent it to the Smithsonian to get checked out, but the Smithsonian never sent them back. They just kept them and said, "Oh, those don't exist."
Oh, wow.
Oh, here's some evidence. Here's some other evidence. Okay, giant
Okay.
Indians. We
Example.
don't we don't just find skeletons. We also find the
Hmm.
evidence of the giants. One of those being, remember we just saw how they had fewer teeth, and bigger jaws. Well, they would use
Hmm.
those to crack shellfish shells from Florida, from the beaches. They would crack giant shells as if they were pistachios or peanuts or just crack.
With their teeth.
And we find
Mm.
all over Florida in preserved mound sites the chewed tips, the chewed rims of clams and oysters that have
Hmm.
been gnawed off by giants' teeth. And even the archaeologist will admit this, that many bones, some Florida natives, were so strong in the jaw that they could bite and eat shellfish like it was a crab leg or something, just bite right through it, or a peanut, like a peanut.
Okay.
Okay, here. Mounds similar to the one in which the bones were unearthed are common in the state. The bones have been sent to the Smithsonian Institution for further examination. This is right there in the
For
last
further
sentence.
examination.
Yeah. Meaning a locked closet,
Wow.
never to be seen again. I want to see. I've got another one where it says that too. It's tremendous.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'll keep looking, but anything else? What else you want to talk about?
Hmm. Yeah, it mentioned in a few of the articles about bodies being found in mounds. What do you know about the ancient mound builders of Florida? Because most people think about mounds, they think about the ones in Ohio, some scattered here and there in other states. A lot of people don't know that Florida too has mounds.
Right. So here's a depiction of an ancient mound in Florida. Now, is that a mound or is that a pyramid?
Hmm.
That's a pyramid, isn't it?
That looks very pyramidal to me. Very much like a step pyramid, like the ones in Central America.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Now they've done with LiDAR, they found in Crystal River, Florida. There's the Crystal River
Hmm.
site. Let's see if we can find that. But just right off the bat, we find mounds today, right? We find mounds.
That's
I want to show you. Sorry,
uh-huh.
you were going to
Yeah, I'm
say?
familiar with Crystal River. It's like north of Tampa,
Yes, that Crystal
right?
River. Um, man, sorry, I'm trying to dig through all my stuff here to find you this good article.
Take your
There's
time.
an there's an article. Uh, what were we just discussing? The
The
it doesn't
mounds
matter.
and pyramids.
Yes. So the mounds of
Can't find it
Florida.
now. That's okay.
Oh, here, let me.
Hmm.
Well, you reminded me. I'm gonna find or
Okay.
if you can let me share. I'm gonna look it up now.
You gotta send me that little link again because I can't find it from this end.
I'm gonna share my internet window this time so that I can search things up as we're talking. Can you see it down there? Perfect. Thank you. This is the Crystal River site, right?
It's
This
loading, spinning. Yeah, there it is.
this is the Crystal River site. It's
Oh,
a group
cool.
of
Okay.
pyramidal mounds,
Hmm.
and there's three. And since there were three, they figured that there must be a fourth one. This genius, um, Gary Daniels, realized that there's three in a certain arrangement, so there must be a fourth. Due to how we know the Mayans
Hmm.
built their pyramids, we know that there must be a fourth in this arrangement. But where the fourth one was in the middle of a swamp. So he got a team to come out with a LiDAR, and
Yes.
he said, I know for a fact there's going to be a pyramid in that swamp. They flew the LiDAR over, and they saw a perfect step pyramid.
Hmm.
Not only was it pyramidal like all the mounds, it was step by step, level by level, going up to the top. They could see it perfectly.
Hmm.
This was broadcast on a TV channel. Let's talk about mounds. Let's talk about
Sure.
look at this. This is what I always like to show people. Um, in 1900, one of the largest pyramids in Mexico, if not the largest, looked like a hill, and almost nobody knew what was underneath it. Fast forward to today, and it's a glorious megalithic structure. So you had clearly a forgetting process. And how many of these
Wow.
do you think we're driving by day to day and don't even realize it? Because we just think,
I
oh,
wonder
that's
that all the time. I wonder.
Mhm. Now you've got some big hills like this in Florida.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're that big, but we have
How many
strange.
hidden in plain sight?
Mhm. All it takes is 6 feet of earth,
Mhm.
dirt fallen leaves, brush, roots to cover this up. You've also got, if we go to, here, let's look this up. Let's look at, so you asked about the ley lines and some of the arrangements. We have Big Mound City. Let's see if this will bring up what I want. Perfect. This is the work of Andis Collins. He is a star mapper and astro archaeologist.
Oh, wow.
So all of this is plotted from the skies. Mounds corresponding to astrology. So a lot of these, when you see these long finger-like features coming out of this site, those are all astrologically or astronomically significant. What would the word be? Pathways where either that's the sun rising, the sun setting, the equinox line, a solstice line, or a lunar max, meaning the moon will go in one direction in the sky and then another direction in the sky, but not anywhere else. So there's a little window, a strip that the moon and the sun are restricted to, and how far they stray away from that line is measured in much of these sites. So a lot of this information takes thousands of years to compile. And we find it being illustrated.
Yes.
We find it being illustrated in the earthworks of Florida, a landmass that we're told the people were hunter-gatherers, no conception of high society or technology, but clearly we see that being refuted by the handiwork of whoever lived here. And I'll zoom in on some of these.
And this is called Mound City.
This is Big Mound City near Lake Okeechobee.
Okay.
And this is kind of what it looks like from the sky. If you could see it underneath the tree cover. Right now it's covered by trees. But this is aligned to many solstice sites. And here I'll go back to my files now. I'll bring up a good.
Sure.
Can I present this, please?
Absolutely.
So now this isn't
there.
This isn't Big Mound City. Some of these might be Big Mound City, but these are other sites in Florida.
Okay.
These show how just before we were zoomed in on a single site, when we zoom out on the larger Florida, we're seeing multiple sites spread across the state. But even in the macro scale, when we're seeing all the sites in themselves are arranged to each other astrologically. So not only is the site, when you zoom in on it, inside of the earthworks, you'll have many different features aligning to the stars. But then when you zoom out and look at the whole state from the sky, you're going to see alignments on the grand scale, hundreds of miles away from each other.
Wow.
How are these people
okay.
piecing all this together if they don't have a helicopter or a satellite to go up and see what they're doing? They're in tune.
Right.
They're in tune to something. They're tuned into the same frequency, or they had a technology superior to what we're allowing them in the mainstream society or mainstream academia. But these are arranged to the constellation of Pisces. Florida, almost all of the
Mm,
mound sites in Florida are arranged to the constellation of Pisces. Why? Because Florida is a Pisces. In
mm-hmm,
ancient times and in modern times, the birthday of Florida today is March 3rd,
mm-hmm.
3 3. That
And
makes
that
Florida a Pisces.
Pisces, right?
Florida's the fishing capital of the
Interesting.
world. It's got the most elderly people. Pisces rules the elderly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Pisces rules fish. Pisces rules water and youth and the pursuit of youth. That's the fountain of youth, you know? So you've got all these things in
Mm-hmm.
Florida. Um,
Mm.
very Piscean.
Heavy Pisces energy. That's great.
What are you? Did I ask you that already?
Yeah, I'm in the DMV area, Maryland border, DC
Oh, but good. But
for now.
what's your zodiac sign? If you don't mind me asking.
Oh no, it's cool. My sun signs Aquarius.
Okay, cool. I'm a Sagittarius,
Hmm.
so we're good.
Yeah,
We should hit it off.
yeah, fire in the
I like
air. Yeah,
Aquarius is
air.
those are the two hippies of the zodiac, Sagittarius and
I
Aquarius.
could see that. I could see that
Mhm.
definitely.
Well,
Yeah.
if you're a hippie, why is it called a hippie? Because if you're saying someone's a hippie, you're saying they're like a Sagittarius. They're a
Oh,
traveler.
really?
They're a
Yeah.
wanderer. They're a philosopher. But why a
Hmm.
hippie? Why is that hippie? Because the word hip means horse. Sagittarius rules the hips. So
Um,
Sagittarius rules the
the
hips.
Sagittarius. Yeah, I was going to ask you
Is
the Sagittarius with the hips. Okay.
horse. Sagittarius is the horse, and hippo means horse. Most people hear hippo and they think of hippopotamus. Well, hippopotamus means river horse or water horse. Hippo means horse. That's why you have,
Water horse. Hmm.
but yeah.
That's cool. All right. So there's a lot of astrological phenomenon going on with Florida, and I guess the locations of the ancient people's mounds and um, the other things that they built there. Now, I heard you say, I don't know if it was today or in another one of your videos, that the canals that intra I guess the canal that runs down the Atlantic coast of Florida, that's man-made.
Yes. So the intracoastal waterway is unique. It
Hmm.
is carved along the. Here, I want to get some. Boom. Wonderful. Okay.
There it
Sorry to
is.
sorry to disregard your question, but this
No, no,
shows
no problem.
now I have the legend that kind of explains some of this. You have the
Okay.
equinox line, the lunar max, and the solstice lines. So these people were able to determine that this is what we were looking at earlier, Big Mound City. All of these little features are carved out or built up
Hmm.
features in the ground, and they each show either the rising of a
Hmm.
certain star, the sun's position on the equinox, the sun's position in the solstice. But I was trying to demonstrate how they're all aligned to constellations, but how are they all aligned to each other? Well, guess what? Big
Yes.
Mound City is kind of like this center point in
Hmm.
Florida. And from it we find, look at this.
Oh, is it?
From Big Mound City. That's Big Mound City, the red dot in the middle, or the green dot. maybe I forget. But look at how
The
these
red
three
dot.
are perfect. Look at these perfect alignments from the orange to the green to the red.
Okay.
I mean, who? How did
Mm,
these people figure that out? And all
that's
of
some
these converge right here on the red.
amazing engineering.
Right. And you can see, this is some LiDAR. You can see just how much they've manipulated the ground. This is Mound Key. Mound Key, Florida, or Big Mound Key. Mound Key, Florida, is almost an entirely man-made island. They shaped the whole thing out to be a ceremonial headquarters. So they
Mm-hmm.
would, this is the Calusa
Okay.
tribe, Calusa in West Florida. But yeah, that was it. This is the picture I was trying to looking for pretty hard, and you can see
Wow.
in this one um, each of these lines points to a different site, and they all are linked up right there in Big Mound City at the center.
Mm-hmm.
All of these lines go out to those different
Hmm.
sites.
Do you know the age of this structure?
Psh, I do not.
Wow,
I'll be honest, I have no
that's
clue.
amazing. Do you know the age of this? Okay. Hmm. Wow. And do they know who built it? They have any idea? Or
Um, we don't know. They don't know shit about this, to be honest. I don't know much about it other than what I can find on the internet. I'm gonna go there soon and do some
okay.
drone footage. Hopefully, we can get some of the first drone footage above it to see if there's any, if you can even see anything poking out of the ground. We'll be able to tell once we get some footage of it, but haven't even been here yet. Most archaeologists in Florida haven't even been here. Um,
Mm, yeah.
so,
This is really amazing because when most people think about which the history that we've been taught is being challenged, and but when most people look at that, it's amazing. Most people, when they think about ancient civilizations, they always think about someplace far, far away, and they don't think that it's right
mhm.
under your feet, right here in the Americas, and in particular Florida, which I've been to a few mounds in the South, some other states, but not in Florida because I really didn't know Florida had any.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got some big ones. There's
Hmm.
Lake Jackson. Lake Jackson is let's see, I don't know if I have a picture, but this is what they look like. They're obviously pyramidal, and you can see how
Yes.
some of the native burials that we think of as being Native Americans are actually intrusive burials. So they dig into the structure to bury somebody, not the other way around. Some structures are built to house um, bodies, like mausoleums. Like we're told the pyramids are mausoleums. That's not true, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these bodies were put
True.
into the mounds by later people.
Oh, by people later on. Okay.
Yeah. And here's just some more arrangements. Here's some of the things that they're pulling out of
Appalachian.
the mounds. So you see copper. Here's
Hmm.
something that we need to talk about. The mound
Sure.
builders. Yeah, you asked about the mound builders. The Florida mound builders were metal
Yes.
workers. They worked with copper,
Metal.
and they worked with many different hard materials, metals. They smelted copper and potentially iron, potentially some other things, but definitely copper. And we find copper artifacts. We find a lot of pipes, so they like to smoke. You know, they
Hmm.
um, but yeah, this is Apalachicola. This is Northwest Florida.
Mm.
But I want to see.
Okay.
There's some more mounds. we watch this? See if this plays.
Sure.
Oh, nice. Yeah, this will work. This is called Three
Okay, we
Mountains
got
Park.
Three Mountains Park. I'm check writing this down next time I come visit to check it out.
Look at this one. This one's
And
in
this is
just some
in
neighborhood.
is it near
Huge. This
Miami?
one. This is near Miami. It's huge.
Okay.
Huge. The video doesn't do it justice, but this thing
Oh
is
wow.
massive. And it's three attached to each other.
Mm-mm. Are they pyramidal shaped or they just
One of them is
oh there's one. Uh,
huge.
wow. It's like a field like a football field size.
It is. There's a sports field on here. This is a neighborhood park. There's not even any signs or
Mm-hmm.
anything. It's just in the middle of the neighborhood. Most of these people probably think it's a trash pile. And the city tells us that they
Mm-hmm.
made this when they built a canal behind it. But I don't believe that one bit.
Right. There's no historical marker there.
Nope, zero. No history on these whatsoever. Very, very little.
Mm.
There, one of them is very pyramidal. The other one
How were you able to
seems like. How was I able to what?
how were you able to find it?
I had a we found a Bible while we were there. Someone left the Bible out. Just left it in the middle of the storm out on the table. But how did we find it?
Wow.
Somebody recommended that we go there. Somebody
Okay.
one of my friends knew about it already and said, "Hey, you got to go there. Got to go check it out." So we did.
Mm.
This is mound number 1. This one has like a step. I don't want to call it a step pyramid, but you can see there's levels to this one. There's distinct
Yes.
levels. And then over
Oh, I
there,
do see. Yes.
this is the second mound over there. But we're on top of mound number 1 right now.
Okay. Okay.
There's limestone at the top. So
Oh wow. This one looks pretty much like it's in a preserved area almost. I wouldn't say forgotten by the city, but it's still like in a park like setting. It just not being disturbed as much.
mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll skip to mound number. This is all mound number 1. Just huge. Mound number 2 is a little
Yeah, that's what I'm
taller.
saying. That's huge. Oh wow, it's bigger than that.
It's mound number 2. So we're walking uphill to get to mound number 2.
Okay. Most of the Florida that I have seen, there's no hills like that anyway.
No, this is very
I see
anomalous.
the limestone. Mm-hmm. Clearly look like mounds.
Mm-hmm. It's mound number 2.
Very much
About to
so.
get to the top. We are up very, very high here.
Yes. Mm.
But yeah,
It's very odd that there's no historical marker. And you are you aware? Has anyone done any like archaeological digs there, or
Nope. Nope.
his Mound 3 now? Okay, and they're all connected.
Yeah, they're
So
connected
it's
by
three in
by
this
ridges.
site. Would there locally be a four? Would there? I'm
There
sorry. Say
could
it again.
be. They're connected by
Mm,
ridges, but I don't know. That's a good idea. There might be a fourth. Who knows if we cleared out
mm,
all the dirt? Who knows what these look like
right.
underneath?
Wow.
But yeah, this one's down by me, down by where I live. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a water pump
And
there,
there's the water.
pump station. And yeah, it was raining on us when we were there. But
So the water
let's see what
behind that, is that a
so,
that
is that a
water that
what?
we saw behind those mounds? Is that was that a lake or a canal? Was that
It's
a
a
lake
canal.
or a canal?
It was a canal.
Canal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm. And just
Wow.
keep
Here's
looking.
another one.
There's like this is the one I was trying to find, Lake Jackson. So if you look at the pyramids of Egypt, pyramids of Giza,
Mm-hmm.
from the
Mm-hmm.
sky, that's what they look like, almost exactly.
They
Now
do
you had this,
the three line.
yeah, you almost had that perfect orientation in Florida being replicated and elsewhere. You know, the Mayas, the Maya, the
Mm-hmm.
Hindu, they all replicated this arrangement, and it's usually the signs of Sirius. So the three stars of Orion's
Mm-hmm.
belt pointing to Sirius is what you'll find with these three pyramid arrangements, or 3 and 4 arrangements. This is Lake Jackson. These are very big as well. There's a
Mm-hmm.
natural stream going through them. Um, this stream here is spring fed. I went there. It's so, I don't know. I might have a video. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
If you do, please
it's
share.
it's so peaceful. This oh, here we go. That's nice. This might be Georgia.
Okay.
This yeah, this is Etowah Mound. So this is Georgia. But you see, I mean,
That's the one in
thousands of
Georgia.
years. Yeah, 500 years later or 5,000 years later, who knows? These things are still almost perfectly pyramidal, tabletop, still have a
Mm-hmm.
geometric
Yeah.
form. And yeah,
Lower Pisces. Timoka Mounds and Middens mark stars of Lower Pisces. Okay.
hmm
The mounds. Okay.
yeah. So yeah, in ancient times, they knew Florida was ruled by Pisces. Today, arbitrarily,
Mm-hmm.
or legally, Florida is a Pisces. But this connection was there in ancient times too. Here we have more pyramidal mounds in Etowah. Etowah,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that Etowah is where we get the
Okay.
word Ethiopia. Etowah, Ethiopia, Ethiopia. W becomes a V in many languages: German, Indian.
Mm-hmm.
Etova. In Spanish, a V becomes a P, a B. So
A B. Mm-hmm.
A W can become a V can become a B can become a P, and that's your Ethiopia, Etopa. And this is north of your rivers of Eden coming out of the Florida Georgia border. This is all going to be in
Okay.
my video that premieres tomorrow, um, or the
Definitely
15th,
check that
tomorrow, 15th, which is In the Beginning by E. Calloway.
out. Mm-hmm.
Ethiopia. And he makes this connection that
Oh, okay.
Etowah was Ethiopia.
So, so Etowah was Ethiopia because it's north of the river with the four heads, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What else we got?
Okay.
What else did you want to discuss tomorrow?
Well, we have a few questions. This has been like eye opening. This is so much, and it's so much to digest. I know we have to do some more videos, but um, we have a few questions in the chat. One, Dia says, "Oh my God, it's Dr. Longo." Move to. She's asking, in your opinion, what's a good part? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I have some noise
You're
in the
muted.
background here. But as far as traveling or moving to Florida, if money is not an issue, I would if money's not an issue, I would recommend
Mm-hmm.
Palm Beach, Palm Beach County. That's on the East Coast. That's where I live.
Mm-hmm.
Palm Beach County. There's a range of cities you could choose from. There's, there's urban, there's suburban, there's rural. Palm Beach County kind of has it all. Palm Beach County tends to be on the safer side, but Palm Beach County is very good quality of life, but the
Mm-hmm.
nature is not. We don't have as much wildlife or nature reserves. We have very good beaches, very nice
Mm-hmm.
ocean, but we don't have that much wild wilderness in Palm Beach County, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
In in My next recommendation would be the Tampa Bay area. In the Tampa Bay area, I would include down to Siesta Key. So Siesta Key is the south end of Tampa Bay. Tarpon Springs is the north end.
I've been there. Yeah.
Where Tarpon Springs?
Yeah,
Tampa.
Siesta Key actually. They have these
Oh, nice.
has the white crystal beach. Oh my God.
Yes.
It's like the sand glistens in the sunlight.
Yes. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
That's the key. Okay.
So those are my two recommendations. Is if you want to live comfortably, still live a normal life with a house and things like that, Palm Beach County, and then Tampa Bay. Miami, I'm not very keen on.
Okay.
I like, Miami's cool. You have the Coral Castle down by Miami. You have Venetian pools down by Miami. There's lots of cool stuff there. To me, culturally, politically,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a good fit for me. And they're also the first city to turn on their 5G in America, Miami. So Miami,
Miami. Okay.
whenever I go there, I don't feel good. I feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Feel physically unwell by the time that I leave. I hate to say it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's true.
Yeah.
My girlfriend gets the same thing, same reaction. So
Yeah, I think it's the like you said, the 5G or just the whatever other technology and devices that they have in that area. And some
mhm,
people are more sensitive to it than others.
right, yeah, for sure. So those are my recommendations.
We got
St. Augustine's also really really nice if you're gonna visit in um, St. Augustine is perhaps America's most historically significant city. It's where the United States has its beginning as we know it. So St. Augustine is a gold mine of old world history and architecture, things like that. But I don't know if I'd live there. It's farther north, so you don't get the tropical element up in St. Augustine. But in Palm Beach and Tampa Bay, you are within the tropical climate. So
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Yeah. What about the Panhandle area? Have you visited
yeah,
that? What do you think
yes.
about that area? That's just me
Now,
asking, not the
sure,
guest.
I love the Panhandle too. It's more like the South, you know. In the Panhandle, you're
Hmm.
it's not it doesn't have a lot of those distinguishing Florida qualities like the palm trees or the coconuts or you know they still have alligators for sure up there, but they don't
Hmm.
have that tropical climate. However, in the Northwest, something that they have that we don't have down here. I should
Hmm.
have mentioned this. In Palm Beach County, we don't have any
Hmm.
springs or very little. Up north, the farther north you go in Florida, the more springs you find. So you
No
have
springs. Okay.
so in Northwest Florida, in the Panhandle, you have a
Hmm.
lot of springs. So there's a lot of springs there. You'll be a very happy person if you like spring water if you go to Northwest Florida. But other than
Hmm.
that, the wilderness tends to kind of be reminiscent of the rest of the Southeast United States. Um,
Hmm.
it feels like Georgia, feels like Alabama, feels like you might forget you're in Florida for a second in the Panhandle.
Yeah. Okay. All right. She has another question. She says, Dr. Longo, have you seen They Clone Tyrone? And what do you think about that movie?
I haven't seen that movie. I don't know what it's about either. I'm sorry. Is that a new movie? It's in theaters now, I assume. I haven't.
Could you repeat because it's breaking up?
Sorry. Um, I haven't seen that movie. Haven't seen it. Don't know what it's about. Sorry.
Hmm. Okay. And she said there's hills like that in Maryland too. I think she's referring to the Mounds, and there are some
Mhm.
questionable hills in Maryland that I've seen myself that don't have. They just have an odd shape, and who knows what it could be, and just no one's um, preserved them, or they just built on top of them, or just disregarded them.
Yes, they do. Maryland, all
So
throughout the
that's
South.
something else. That is, yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm. They're all over. Okay. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we go?
No, thank you for hosting me tomorrow. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah, this was very eye opening, very informative. I look forward to having you on the show again, maybe talking about some other aspects of holistic
Sure.
health and healing, especially astrology, since you do know a lot about astrology, and you say that's something that you fancy yourself as being an astrologist. So that would be great, especially how astrology relates to health and everything else, really.
Sure, that would be a great topic for the next one.
Yes. Yeah,
Astrology and
spirituality,
health.
everything. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep, that'd be great. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing this information. Another time, hopefully the computer won't be acting up as much. I try to use a different one next time.
Yeah.
I think because we just had a storm today, that might have something to
True. True. Yeah.
peace and
Also,
love, and thank you. Have a good evening.
thank you. Peace and love to you too. Thank you, Tamara.
All right.
Appreciate it. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thanks
Uh-huh.
for listening.
You too. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.